Hi, everyone, and welcome to this morning's session. We are so glad that you were able to join us this morning and very excited to get started. Please remember to keep yourself on mute if possible throughout the session, and we will definitely be calling on some of you to speak. We'll just give a couple more minutes, one more minute for all the students to trickle in, and we'll go ahead and get started. As always, as you know, the grounding principle of Crossroads is compassion, and is very important to ground all of your participation in the program with that value. We really encourage you to not only be compassionate, but also be open-minded and challenge yourself and really engage with your peers compassionately. We will leave the chat open, so please engage in the chat respectfully and honestly, and we're so excited for you to bring your most curious selves to this morning's session. I want to give a huge thank you to Daniel Hewett for joining us today. Daniel Hewett is an architect, a teacher, the founder of Urban Frame, and co-founder of the Center for Complexity at the Rhode Island School of Design. We are really, really excited to hear from him today about the session of today's title is Double Vision, a Toolkit for Creative Innovators. So you will be able to learn how every year our greatest opportunities for meaningful societal change grow more complex and difficult to understand. As humans, it is easy to feel helpless when considering challenges like climate change, healthcare, social justice, or food systems. So what can each of us do differently to make a lasting impact on the issues about which we care the most? Without delaying further, I'm excited to hand it over to Daniel. And please, in the chat, you can find our social media and any questions you may have about the program, you can direct to ceelpglobal@gmail.com. And we really hope you enjoy this morning's session.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Daniel, and I am really thrilled to be here to speak to you about a topic that my colleagues and I are quite passionate about. We teach in an institution that is famous for teaching art and design. And the work that we're doing is a little bit different than that. It's called strategic design. And that may be new to some of you, but it's a discipline within the design professions that focuses on developing lasting systems-based solutions to complex problems. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to run through a series of principles that we use in our work to try and get better results than you can get just by fixing a problem. The problems we're looking at, the opioid crisis, nuclear threat reduction, education, these are problems that actually don't have simple solutions. They may not even have solutions as such. What they have are the potentials for responses. And so the question is, how do we respond? How should we respond within the field of challenges that we're dealing with at any given moment? So what we're going to do today is we're going to go through a series of principles, but just so that it's not me talking the whole time, what I want to do is introduce you to a studio way of working. So I don't know if any of you have ever worked in a studio as a painter or a designer, but a studio is a different kind of format, and I'll talk about that in a minute. What we're going to do is we're going to work in a studio together to answer a question. I have no idea what we're going to come up with, but it'll be kind of experimental, and it should be kind of interesting to see what we come up with. Okay, so why don't we start? One of the other principles, in addition to curiosity and generosity, that I'd like to bring to this is humility. And this will come out, you'll see this in a minute. And what I mean by that is the idea that I don't have the answers. It looks like I do, right? I'm brought in like an expert, but I really don't have answers here. Okay, I have an approach. I have a framework for engaging with a topic, but answers arise as evidence arises within a system new answers arise. Okay. If we are working well, the discoveries that come out of that will be appropriate to inform the design decisions we make. So we're going to see how this goes. This is very much the way we work. We've set up a framework here for our each of us to engage and for us to engage as a community for the next hour and a half, and then we'll see what happens. Okay. All right. So I'm going to actually have to do this here to get rid of that. Okay, cool. All right. So this
Daniel,
is the yeah.
So sorry. I think if you're able to move the Zoom panels, I think they're just blocking the screen a little bit.
The Zoom panels. People, that's right. Of course. I think there's a better way, Tiara. And that is to share screen, but share the deck itself. Let's see how that goes. Is that better?
Yeah, that's a little better.
Yeah? Okay. All right. So what we're going to do now is I just want to set the stage a little bit. This is the world in which we're operating. Okay. What we're going to do is we're going to assume that the challenges and the problems we're working in are complex. So if I said to you, I'd like for you to design me a new toy, what I want to do is I want to make sure that we just don't think that it's about the toy. It's not just about the object. This is a pair of glasses. This object exists in a much more interesting world than just the world of eyeglasses. Okay? And that's true of all the biggest challenges we know. So the qualities or characteristics of that world, the world that we live in, are that problems, there's volatility. Okay, so volatility is that small changes can have big impacts. Okay. Uncertainty, we're going to talk about that in a minute. Things are not clear. They're just never really that clear. And yet we still have to make really important decisions. And as designers, we have to make things in response to what appear to be problems without all the information we'd like. That's the nature of it. Complexity. Complexity is many things, but it's something different from complicated. Complicated is difficult. Complex goes beyond difficult and enters the realm of a state that is actually difficult for us to ever fully understand. It's constantly changing. It's emergent. Okay. And we'll talk about that in a minute too. Ambiguity, the inability to ever be sure in our language or in other ways that we describe things that we're fully and accurately describing what we're talking about. So I think I'm being clear right now, but I can't be sure. And what that does is it sets up a very interesting challenge if we're trying to collaborate. Okay. So this is the kind of world that we're all operating in and trying to make decisions that make the world better. Okay. So this is a challenging environment in which to work. Okay. We're going to go through 6 principles. The first 5 we're going to talk through, and the last one we're going to do in the studio setting. The first is wisdom and expertise. One of the things that you guys are all doing, and I think must do really, really well, is know how to succeed. And the way that typically works is we understand what a problem is, we understand what is expected of us, and we deliver that. Okay? But there's operating within that framework only can miss things. So the example I like to give is that if you want to understand a problem or a situation more deeply, you could go to your friends, but your friends are likely to say back to you what you already know. They might reassure you or something like that. But if you got a really tough problem, one of the best places to go is to an elder, right? So if you think about who you call when you have a really big problem, you call your mom or your dad or one of your grandparents. So why is that? What do they bring to the problem or the challenge that your friends can't? Tiara, this would be a great time just to hear from a couple people. So if you have an idea about that, why would you go to a grandparent, not a friend?
Definitely. Please raise your hand and we will call on students. And also please feel free to type your responses in the chat. Let's hear from Akib. Are you able to unmute yourself?
Yes, I did. So I think because our grandparents have the experience, but our friends do not have that. So that's the reason we go to our grandparents, not our friends.
Yeah, that's a really good reason. They have experience. And Akib, if you think about the things that you have a lot of experience with, and somebody comes and asks you to reflect on that or to give them the answer, you might also put yourself in that same position that your grandparents are in, is that you know that the answer is actually more complicated than the person who's asking it thinks it is. Right? And when
Yes,
you
yes,
ask
sir,
your,
right.
like if you ask your grandparents a question about love, now you could ask your friend a question about love and you'll get the experience of somebody your own age, right? But if you ask your
Yes, sir.
grandparents a question about love, they're gonna be able to talk all night, right? They'll just keep talking. They'll keep telling you about love and love is this and love is that, right? And they're not wrong. They're right. It's many things. It's complex. That's why we want to go to elders. That's why we want to go to those people who see the larger systemic, complex version of the problem we see. Okay? The purpose of doing strategic design is we want you to have that wisdom. Okay? So answers are never simple. They're almost always plural in the way that they emerge. Sometimes they're even contradictory. Okay? All right. So that's that. We'll see that in a little while. Okay, this next piece. Human limits versus humility. This is a big topic, but we as people trying to engage with a complex world are, let's just say, somewhat limited. Okay? And I'll give you some examples of that. One, if you really wanted to understand the world and you were designing this thing, you would not just give it two eyes. And you would not put them on the front only. We'd have eyes all around. Right? Doesn't that make sense? But we don't. But what's interesting is that we behave as if we do. We think what we know, we think we know what's going on around us. And so we have a great deal of confidence. But the truth is, we're only seeing this much. Most of the world we don't see. And that's true in other ways beyond sight also. It's true with emotion. It's true in some of the ways that I've listed here. All of our senses are limited. So that if I were to say, we have good ears, well, we have pretty good ears, but my dog can hear things way better than I can. So if I was trying to understand the world, I have to remember that I'm only seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, feeling small pieces of the world. A very small slice of the world is accessible to me. But one of the things that we do as humans is we forget that. And we make decisions as if we understand the whole story. Okay, so a big part of this work has to do with what I would call cognitive humility. Remembering always that we are only seeing a very small part of a larger system. Okay? And that's okay, because there are ways to deal with that. But it's really important that we see that. Okay. Okay. So you guys probably have thought a lot about bias in school and with family and with friends. There are many interesting things about bias, and I think it's fair to say we'll never get rid of bias. It's with us forever. But if we can be aware of it, then we can work with it as we make our decisions and come to some kind of understanding of the world as designers and change makers. So understanding that bias is really important. What I want to do is give you an example here of the way that bias can lead to certainty, and that certainty can lead to bad decisions. Okay, so this is a swimming pool in Denmark. This photograph was taken in the middle part of the 20th century. And this was for many years, a very much loved swimming pool. It's a public swimming pool. And after a while, people stopped coming to it. And the town fathers, the managers of the town, decided that it was time to get a new swimming pool. They'd seen other towns around them build new swimming pools that were heated and other things. And they decided that the reason that people weren't coming was because this was an older swimming pool. And so they hired an architect to come and design the new swimming pool. And the architect, who was a thoughtful designer, said, "We like the idea of designing your swimming pool. We'd love to get started, but we are not sure that your premise, the problem you're defining, is correct." And so they went away. And they came back and they ended up telling the managers of the town that they did not need a new swimming pool after all, that it wasn't the issue that they thought. In fact, the issue was that the people who ran the bus system had failed to put buses out to this site during the hours that people wanted to swim. Okay. But no one had connected those two things. And so based on the inability to actually read the system for what was wrong, an entire process had started, and they almost built a whole new pool to solve the wrong problem. Okay? You guys are growing up in a time where the world still thinks of solving problems in the way they did 100 years ago. And the challenge for you will be to solve problems that are currently existing. They're the ones that are actually in front of us. And in order to do that, you're going to have to develop some skills as change makers and leaders for doing what the title of this talk is, for doing two kinds of vision, for seeing the world as it actually is and seeing the possibility in that world. Okay? So you want to see the world as it is and the possibility at the same time. So before I go on, Tiara, if I could just open it up for a question or two right now, I think it'd be great to hear from people on where they are.
Yeah, absolutely. So please, if you have a question, go ahead and raise your hand. Jonas, I think responding to the certainty bias and expertise understanding, was saying, we don't know the reality, we know what our senses allow us to know.
Yeah.
Interesting comment. So if you have any questions or want to follow up on
Anybody have a question
value
so far?
please go ahead and raise your hand.
Does this make sense if you think about your own life, what I'm saying? That you don't, sometimes it's easy to get a little bit overconfident about what we know. I'm a man, and I know, I'm going to generalize right now, but I know in a lot of conversations I'm in with other men, men like to be certain. They spend a lot of effort and time and energy being certain, being confident. And it's one of the key principles of our work to try and figure out ways to not be so confident all the time, not be so certain all the time, and to remember that we don't have all the answers. So I'm just guessing that in your own friend circles, that may be true as well, that you have certain friends who are always really confident. And then you have those other friends who are quiet. They're observers. They wait before they speak. And those guys tend to give us a great deal of insight when they finally do speak. And so one of the things that is really important in our work also is making sure that everyone has a chance to both see, process, and share. And that together we get a fuller picture of the problem we're trying to address. Okay? All right, so I think we can move on. This next piece is an example of what happens when in a very complex challenge, and this was the financial crisis of 2009, 2008, the people who were in charge of solving the problem for everyone else were not seeing what was actually going on. Okay? And what you're going to see is two of the most important people in the government, in the US government, coming to terms. Like, it's almost funny. We're not here to make fun of them, but it's a little bit funny coming to terms with what now seems so obvious. Okay? So in these two little videos, you're going to see them realizing that the world is a complex place, more complex than even experts can manage.
It turns out that there's a lot of interlinks throughout the financial system. The system had grown to a point where a lot of people were dependent upon each other. And that the collapse of one part of the system wouldn't just affect a part of the financial markets, it would affect the average citizen.
Okay. This was news to this person, the President of the United States, that complex systems are made of parts that are interconnected, and that what happens in one part actually has an effect on the other parts. Okay. Power and confidence and expertise bumping up against a complex world. This is the former chairman of the Federal Reserve Bank named Alan Greenspan being interviewed by Senator Waxman when everyone was trying to figure out what had gone wrong.
You found a flaw in the reality.
Flaw in the model that I perceived is the critical functioning structure that defines how the world works, so to speak.
In other words, you found that your view of the world, your ideology was not right. It was not working.
Precisely. No, that's precisely the reason I was shocked, because I've been going for 40 years or more with very considerable evidence that it was working exceptionally well.
Okay. So here is an admission in a very public place by a very prominent government official that his way of interacting with the world through what he called evidence turned out to not be adequate to explain the world that was actually there. okay? That's a big event. But it happens for each of us just in our daily lives all the time, okay? So let me just open it up quickly here, Tiara, if we could, I would just love to hear from anyone who can think of a situation in their own life where it seemed like they understood something and then something happened to reveal the fact that you didn't actually understand it, and it was actually much more complex or interesting or fun. Like how its dimension changed once you got a better understanding.
So please raise your hand, or you can type a response in the chat and we can call on you from there. Again, the question was, what is a situation in your own life where you thought you understood a situation, but then came to realize it was much different, much more complex than you realized? Zainab, please go ahead.
Hello, Professor Daniel. So first of all, it's an amazing topic. 2 years ago, I was feeling like almost the life was ended for me. Everything from the environment was coming in a destructive way. I wasn't even able to analyze what was happening. And all what I knew was my life had came into an end from the social, economical, and financial states until one day my professor told me that maybe I should start thinking on it from another point of view. And since then, I found that no, this wasn't a destructive point of in my life. It was a growing point where I started growing from that side. I was nearly almost on the floor or under even the earth. And now when I look at myself and compare myself to that moment, I'm talking about 2 years ago when I was at my second year of university having PVCs, which are premature ventricular contractions, and almost feeling that the world is ending me. I feel that I've passed through a lot of milestones, and we should never look at the thing the way that I was looking at, and we should always look at it from another point of view.
That's great. Zainab, that's an amazing testimony of the way that you can get inside of an issue so much that you can't see another perspective until someone makes it clear to you. And it sounds like yours was a very complicated and complex situation. There are simpler examples, if you think of it. That I don't know who your favorite band is, your favorite musical group. But if you think who your favorite musical group is, the one that you really like, that like keeps coming out with music that challenges you, the first time you heard it, the first time your friend let you hear that band, you may not have liked them. In fact, they might have seemed harsh or somehow outside of anything you would ever like. And yet here you are, they're your favorite band now. So what happens? Something changes. We begin to hear it in a different way. We hear it more deeply, okay? And sometimes that's because we listen to it a lot, or we are talking to friends who, as Zainab just said, or like your grandparents will do, they'll give you a perspective on it that'll blow your mind, okay? It didn't change, you did. So what we want to do in strategic design work is we want to put ourselves in a mindset to have our mind change, because the world will speak to us. And the question is, can we hear it? Okay? Okay, so we're going to move on.
Also,
okay.
Folks,
yeah.
Please feel free to send messages in the chat responding to anything Professor Hewett is saying. We can call on students from there as well.
Okay, and I'm going through this stuff so fast. I'd really like you to all come to the Rhode Island School of Design for 4 years, and we'll really get into this, but I'm going through it quickly now. Okay, so then what happens if we do this? And what happens, what kind of mindset do we want to encourage in ourselves? What we want is a mindset that allows the familiar to be strange and the strange to be familiar. Okay? So we all have friends and family, some of whom are very conservative and only see things in one way. And then we have those friends, those other friends, who are always they seem kind of out there, and they're seeing things in really dynamic ways. They always are trying something new. Okay? We want to move towards that experimental frame of mind as much as possible. Because if we don't, we'll end up certain and confident about too small a piece of the world. Okay? So we want to open up the aperture, the opening. We want to change the frame of our reference. We want to change our lens. Okay? So the example I give here is there's this thing that floats. And it weighs hundreds and hundreds of pounds of liters. It's full. Why? Because it's full of water, but it still floats. Like nothing else in the world floats that is made of water and weighs hundreds and hundreds of pounds, but this thing does. Not only that, but it moves and it constantly changes. And when you need it to, it gives you the water you need. It drops it on you for free too. Not only that, but it's really, really good water. It's like the best you can get for free. It does this other thing that's amazing. If you lie on your back and look up at it, you can see animals' faces. You can see the shapes of things in this thing, and it's always changing. This thing is wise. It seems like it's smart. Somehow it knows. I don't know. It's just an amazing thing. Okay. Now there's a name for this thing. But if I use that name, if I say that right now, it's likely that it will feel like a small thing. And what it is an amazing thing. So one of the things why this is a principle that's very important to us is we want to see the world in terms that open up its amazing qualities, open up its potentials so that we can see it in new ways. Because if we can see it in new ways, all of a sudden the design possibilities or possibilities for change and innovation emerge. Okay? So I'm not going to name this thing in the name that it already has. I'm more likely to want to rename it or even come up with a completely new word for it that is capable of describing all that stuff that it does. Because that old word that we all have heard for this thing, I don't like it anymore. It's too small. Okay? So we're going to do an exercise in a minute that begins to get at that. We're going to have the experience of doing that again, okay? But I wanted to give you this as an example first. We want to be able to turn something that's very familiar into something that's strange and wonderful. Okay. At art schools and design schools and in laboratories and various places around the world, we have different ways of working in different places. If you look behind me here is an image of what we would call a studio. And in an art school or design school, we work in this kind of space. Okay. And it can look like a lot of different things. This is one that is, in a sense, looks like a museum. It is actually a museum, but it's also a repository. It's holding many approaches to some similar questions. So it's really useful for us to be in a place like this to reflect on the ways people who have worked on topics before us have done that. Nature at the Rhode Island School of Design is taken very seriously. We think a lot about the way nature has responded to complex challenges, because nature is really, really good at dealing with complex challenges over time. Okay, so we have what's called the Nature Lab, where we have examples of animals and plants that give us insight into how the world works, how it can work in a way that we can't think of. And that gets us out of our fixed small way of thinking. So when we're there, we'll work at a variety of different scales, the microscopic, all the way up to what we call GIS, which gives us regional information on large systems. And the other thing we do, this is a room that's really special that I love at the Rhode Island School of Design, where it's one of the labs in the jewelry making and the metal smithing department. This is where people work with aluminum and brass and steel and tin and gold and silver. And in this space, they not only make jewelry, but they make tools to make jewelry. Okay. And that's something that if we had some more time today, we'd start to make our own tools for the work we do. Because if you're really doing this work well, the tools that already exist sometimes aren't enough. So we make tools in order to be able to discover new things. Okay. So now we're going to jump in. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at a particular thing in a new way. Okay. And I'm going to give you an illustration of this before we start. One of the things that that people do when they go to art school is they draw, and they draw a lot. And I don't know if any of you like to draw or have drawn sort of seriously, but one of the things that you do when you try and draw is you try and see what's in front of you. And I'll give you an example of that. If I'm trying to draw this thing here, it's very easy for me to look at that and go, oh, that's a hand. I know what hands are. I'm going to draw it. And if we all were together here and I put a piece of paper in front of you, what tends to happen is that people look at the thing and they start drawing. And then before too long, they're just looking at their drawing. They're just looking at their drawing. They stop looking at this. Why? Certainty and confidence has them building the hand on the paper from memory, from what they think hand is. And so they're creating hand qualities in their drawing. They're not actually drawing this anymore. So the only way to actually see what's in front of you is to pretend like you've never seen it before. Okay. So sometimes in a design, in the world of designers, that's called having an empty mind or a fresh mind. So I don't want to see this as a hand if I want to draw it, or if I want to discover it, let's say it's a problem, not a hand. I don't want to do that. I want to discover it. I want to see it as something completely new. It's a thing. It's just a thing. Okay. And it's got all these really interesting parts and pieces and places and surfaces and sounds. But for me to turn off in my head that it's a hand is a really important switch in this work. Okay. So what I would love for you guys to be able to do is to be able to turn off the switch that says, I already know what this thing is, or I already know what that person's about to say, or I already know how that thing works. Okay? And this is where, as future leaders, I'm going to challenge you. Smart does not mean you already know. Okay? I know you've studied, you study a lot. I know you have looked at things deeply. My challenge is to you is to invite you to think that the things you know the best, you actually know the least. Because if I asked your grandmother about love or any of the big topics in life, she might say, I've been there, I've seen it, but I don't know that much. It's bigger. It's more amazing and wonderful than I could ever put in words. So that's what we want you to do with this, or anything you're engaging with. You get it, that you don't know it. You actually can't know it fully. Okay? And you remember the cognitive humility. Like, you only have certain senses. This thing, like to an eagle or to a worm, it's a completely different thing. They don't know it's a hand. So if you're talking about what it is and what it isn't, you have to remember you only have one perspective, okay? All right, so that's our introduction to this next piece. Studio has begun. So what I'd like you to do is go and find yourself a pencil in your house, okay? We're gonna wait a minute. Everybody go get a pencil. Okay. I hope, unless your houses are huge, you've been able to run and get a pencil. Everyone's got one. Can everyone just hold up their pencils so everybody can see how many pencils are in the room with us? Cool. I need one too. Okay. All right. Simplest thing in the world. Couldn't be more familiar. We all know what it is, right? All right. So you can see where I'm going, right? This is also the most complex problem in the world. It's your next favorite band. Okay? It's love. Okay? Everything we look at as strategic designers, we're going to see if we can figure out something more than the rest of the world is seeing. Okay? We're going to do that in 3 steps. And the first is object, a thing as it is. Okay? So what I want you to do is I want you to take a minute and I want you to write down on a piece of paper what this is. Describe this thing. Okay. I'm going to stop, if it's okay with you, I'm going to stop using the name for it that we all know, because the more I use that, the more my thinking gets small. So I'm going to let that go for a little while. I'm going to ask you to write down on a piece of paper your description of it. And it doesn't have to just be physical. You can describe it in any way you want. Okay. So what we're going to do now is we're going to hear from some folks on what this thing is as an object, their descriptions of it as an object. Okay. So I'm going to invite someone to volunteer and share with us what that is.
Yasmin, are you able to unmute yourself?
Hi, could you hear me?
Hi, I can. Yeah, you're coming in clear.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, thank you for this amazing session. It's really interesting and make me think a lot of different things.
Mm.
This thing is a tall thing, something tall. There is a carbon inside. It may destroy from the top. It's surrounded by wood. It had different colors. Sometimes there is something on the top may erase what you write down. And usually the children use it more than the elder people.
Okay. All right, cool. So Yasmin, let me ask you a question. Like, can I ask you some questions?
Yeah, for sure.
Because you seem really knowledgeable.
Thank you.
Really, very knowledgeable. Like almost like an expert. Like you had so many things to tell us about this. So my question is, when you use this word wood, how did you know?
Because if it's smell and its color, and I see many videos for people who are introducing these things.
Okay.
So I knew it's a wood.
So all right, let me suggest just as an experiment that
Okay.
you think you know it's wood.
Okay.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
So you have a lot of evidence. I think we all are impressed. You have all the right evidence, but I'm not sure you actually know that it's wood. It could be something that looks like wood, right? And
Yeah.
you said something else. You said it's tall. What did you mean by that?
It's very tall. It's like it's 20 centimeters long. So it's tall.
Okay, so it is tall. Is it as tall as you are?
No, it's short than I am.
Oh, okay, that's helpful. So now what you're doing is you're making the use of your description better. Because I don't know if it's actually tall. If I'm an ant or a little bug,
Yes, we have to
it could
make.
seem really, really tall, right?
Yes, we
But
need
if
to make
I'm
comparisons.
yeah. Because if I'm an elephant, would I call it tall?
Yeah,
Maybe
but
not.
compare when we compare it to a building, it seems so short.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So now what we have to do is if we're really going to describe this thing, and if we're going to describe it in terms that, let's say, leave openings, because you're smart. I can tell you're smart. I think everyone in this room is smart.
Thank you.
But the problem with being smart is we believe we're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
and because do you have brothers and sisters?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah, and you're always telling them 5, and you're always telling them that you're right, right? And that like they believe Yasmin is smart. She knows. Okay.
Yeah,
You gotta
that's
be.
true.
We have to be so careful of this, because what happens is we stop actually seeing the possibilities outside of what our first conclusion is.
Yeah.
So another way to say this, instead of saying it is tall, is to improve our language to be more precise so that we leave open potentials. Do you know this word, potentials? Like we want
Yes.
there to be lots of potentials in this thing. And so the way I want to engage it, I want it to sort of vibrate with possibility. Okay, that's very different than the way a scientist would approach this, because the scientist wants to rule out possibilities.
Yes.
They want it to just be one thing and one thing only.
To be open to other possibilities.
Exactly. Okay, so cool. So now this thing is tall for some and small for others.
Yes.
Ooh, cool. Now it's complex, because now it's actually being described in the way that it really exists, which is it's not one thing. Okay?
Yes.
So object is a thing as it is a way of getting at what all the ways that it is. Okay? So if I said to, let's see, Aldo, if I were to ask you, Aldo, what color is this? Hold on, you're muted just a sec. There you go.
Daniel, can we call, I know Aldo has had a chance to speak in the last session as well.
Oh, okay.
Is it okay if we call on another student?
Absolutely, yeah. You
just want to make, I'm sorry, Aldo, I know you always have such interesting comments. I just want to make sure that all students can speak in some of these sessions. We can go, Divya, are you still able to speak, or Subarshan?
Okay, so Subarshan, what color is this? Based on what we were just talking about, how would you answer the question? Because you know, your teachers, like all the people in the world, they'll ask you simple questions. And what do they want? They want simple answers, right? But as a strategic designer, as a person who's actually committed to making change in a complex world, simple answers won't do. So my question to you is a dumb, simple question. What color is this?
Based on what I see, it's yellow in color. But that's once again my perspective based on my vision.
Okay, so I would say that's interesting. Can we see it? You're not looking at it, but can we see it? Can we see your pencil?
Yeah, you asked my pencil. So my pencil is in green color.
Okay, let's see. Let's take a good look at it. Just put it up to the camera so everyone can have the same view that you have. All right. Can we see both ends? Okay. All right. Does anyone see the problem with Subarshan's answer? Right? We can already see, right? It's incomplete. Subarshan, you said it's green color.
It's green and blue.
Oh, now, okay, cool. Now it's blue too. All right. And what else?
It also has a white strip.
Yeah, it has white stripes. And what about that other end?
So it's also beige color or watercolor, which is however you call it in the language.
Okay.
The color of the wood.
Beige, yeah. And
it has a pointy black end.
Okay, wait a minute. Now you're getting really, really heavy on me. Okay, it's pointy for you, but not for a tiny, tiny little bug. For a tiny little bug, that end is actually a big round thing. Okay, so I'm not sure it's pointy, or it's not only pointy. And that beige color, if you get up real close, it's actually made of many colors.
True.
Right? Because we're seeing those are the pores in what was called the wood, whatever that material is. And even the green part, if you look at it, we could say that it's green, but of course that would suggest that it's the same as every other thing people call green. So we may need a more precise language for that as well. And then there's this other problem. In the period of time since we've been talking about its color, you've been handling it. and the oil from your fingers has gotten on it. And that has changed the color, even though it's hard for us to see, which means that this thing is never the same from moment to moment. Okay? All right. Anything else on the color, Sebastian?
So that's all I can see.
Okay.
Now,
All right. So, all right, cool. Okay. So far we have a relatively complex understanding of this thing based on materiality and color. And we could keep going. We could talk about smell. We could talk about all kinds of things with this thing. And eventually what we'd end up with is such a complex and rich description of it that the word that we used to use for this thing would not be enough. We'd want new word or words to describe this, okay? We've just made it complex. It was actually complex before we started, but we've just recognized its complexity as an object, okay? If you want to innovate and make change in the world, that is what you're going to need to do with every problem you're given. You're going to need to very quickly discover its complexity. Because otherwise what you will do is you will come up with design solutions, you'll solve problems based on the fact that it's just a yellow pointy pencil. Okay, but the things we know that are complex, like we talked about before, they're not just one thing. They're very complex. They have very many dimensions. And that's what we've just been talking about. Okay. We're going to come back to this because there's something I think some of you may have seen on your pencil that's really, really important and will help us as we go through the rest of this. Okay. Next is context. In order to really understand this thing, and we'll call this a problem, we'll call it love, we'll call it whatever. But this thing, in order to understand it, we can't just understand it as a standalone object, okay? Even though many parts of culture want to get us to see things as one way only, or operating in isolation. This thing actually almost never operates in isolation. It's always in a context of some kind, okay? So I'm interested in if you would just take a minute and write down the contexts in which this operates. What are the contexts for its use? Okay, so what are the ecologies or places or situations that help us to understand its use, its purpose, its role? Okay, so just take a minute to write down some of those.
While everyone is writing, I just wanted to bring up an interesting comment that Jonas made about a design book that Jonas read at one point. He said that when the light turns off, the pencil is black and there's no fixed color of anything.
Yeah. That's really cool. Yeah. Okay. As everybody's finishing up, perhaps we could choose someone, Tiara, and they could share their sense of some of the contexts in which this thing operates.
Odagwe, are you able to unmute yourself?
Okay. Yeah, good day, everyone.
Hi.
Yeah. So I think I wrote down 3 contexts here. So the first one is for children learning how to write.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you
So the
describe that
second
context?
one.
Can you
Sir?
describe that context? Can you describe that context?
Okay. Children learning how to write tend to use the pencil because they make mistake a lot. So while making mistake, they can actually erase the mistake and rewrite again.
Okay,
So
now
that is
that's
why
good.
they
That's
use the
you're
pencil.
describing the use, but can you describe the context? Like, are they on the moon usually?
Sorry, I didn't get that.
Are they on the moon when this happens?
No.
No. Where are they?
I can't hear you well.
What is the context in which this happens? What this thing you're talking about with children? It's not on the moon. It's not on Mars. It's probably not underground. What is the context? What is the place? What does it look like when that? Okay, so what is that like?
Okay, they write it on the paper.
Okay, so good. Okay, so there's a paper, what this thing you're calling paper. I'm going to pretend I know what that means. Paper, and this thing that you're calling pencil interacts. It interacts with the paper,
with the children's hand,
and a children's hand. That other thing that we were talking about. So now we've got these 3 things. Each one, I think, are pretty amazing. We know this is an amazing thing, right?
Yeah.
And we've already determined this is, and this thing called paper.
Yes, like a book. This is the paper.
Okay. That's one kind of paper. And this thing, the context is that it's in the hand, interacting with the hand and the paper. Okay, that's like an amazing set of relationships. What's another context?
Okay, another context is on wooden marking, like a carpenter now, for example, wants to mark where he wants to cut. So instead of using a paper, he's writing with the hand and the pencil on the wood.
Okay. And so what is the context of that? Describe that context as if you were out there, like you're a reporter for the news on TV. You're a reporter on the scene describing the scene where this is taking place as if it's a big and important story. What would you be seeing?
Okay, I would say, a carpenter needs to cut this wood to make it a particular object, maybe a table or a chair. So he needs to mark where exactly he needs to cut from after making a measurement to be able to get the right size. So the marking helps him to place the saw where he needs to place it to cut it.
Yeah, but slow down. It's so much going on. So where does where does the carpenter keep this thing?
Most times in Africa, they put it in their ear like this. Just hang it there.
That's crazy. That's crazy. Wait, so they put it behind in their ear? How does it stay there? How does it know how?
Yes, it will stay there to hang like this, something like this. Like, you see, it's staying there like that. But when they want to use it, they pick it from there. And they use it.
That's pretty amazing. So it stays by itself?
Yes.
Okay, that's fantastic. I thank you I'm so glad you were on the scene and you saw that, because if you weren't on the scene of the context, we wouldn't have remembered that.
Okay.
That this thing is made so that you can stick it like that, and it works. And it doesn't fall out until you're ready to take it out. Okay?
Yeah. Yes.
Cool. That's a really important thing. So now, like, You don't think so, but like it's very like its ability to engage with multiple parts of the human body
Yeah.
is pretty amazing. Some other carpenters stick it in their pocket, right? Or in this
Yeah,
pocket
sure.
right here.
Exactly, the front pocket.
So that's pretty amazing. It can do that too, right? What am I doing? I'm making the familiar strange.
Okay.
As if I've
Yeah,
never seen it before, and I'm allowing myself to be blown away by the things that everyone else thinks is normal.
it's normal.
Okay? If you do that, you will see possibilities for innovation, possibilities for change. Okay? If you can get yourself to see the familiar in a strange way. This is a really important thing that you just did so beautifully. You're like, no, man, it goes in your ear too. Wow, that's so cool. How did they do that? So we now again, just the whole idea that it's just a pencil. It's not just a pencil. It's that most amazing thing you've ever seen. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So next, next we want to move on. Okay. Actually, I want to hear from one other person on context, if we could.
Sure, Nadima, can we go to you?
So we can use this to tie my hair. If I don't have another thing, and I can tie my hair.
What?
Like this.
Wait a minute. I thought it was a pencil.
Yes, it's a pencil.
And you're saying it can tie hair too?
Yes, the girls know that, okay? All the girls here that have big hairs, we can tie.
Okay, can you do it? Show us how that works. Can you do it? Show us how it works.
I can put the pencil here and tie my hair.
All right. Amazing. Fantastic. All right.
Okay.
Yeah, I guarantee that's just amazing. And that is an example of how if we're sitting in our studio or at our desk and trying to solve the problems of the world, we will never see all the possibilities. But Nadima says, no, yeah, I know you guys write with this thing, but I keep my hair back with it. Okay? That's also what it is. Okay? Nadima, you just did it. You've made this complex.
Yeah.
Cool. Nice.
That's very useful.
Okay, so it's very useful. And when do you do that? Like, I'm thinking about the context. Do you do that if you're going to a wedding?
Yeah, I can. But I probably, yes, I could do it.
But you might not, right? Because when you go to a wedding, you find yourself a ribbon or you find something a little fancier, right?
Yes.
Okay, so now it's good for hair, but not all the time. It's good for hair in the more casual times. Okay? Again, what we're doing is we're building out a more complex understanding. It's not just always. It's sometimes, and it's in particular times that it's particularly useful. Okay? Really, really good. That's beautiful. Love it. Okay. Any other contexts that help us to understand, just like Nadima did, like she's out, she wants to go like running or she wants to like hang out with her friends, but she doesn't want her hair all in her face. That's a context in which she would use this to put her hair back. Okay, one more.
Okay, Miriban, how about we go to you?
Yes, I think the context is sketch paper, sketch, and my mind.
Okay, so sketch paper. What do you mean? Like, what does it do? Like, I'm going to pretend I don't know what this thing is. So see if you can describe what the context is for that.
Like when I get a project, when I draw a project, I draw in my mind, draw things. After that, I put on a paper,
Wait,
another
you're going
paper.
so fast. You're going so fast. Just like, wait,
I'm
so you,
so nervous,
you
sorry.
can, oh, don't be nervous. So you're saying that you can design or sketch in your brain. Is that right?
No.
Inside your head.
And after I draw at
Wait, you're
on
going too
this
fast.
paper.
You're going so fast. So it's in your head first.
Yes.
Again, what am I doing, you guys? What am I doing? I'm allowing the familiar to be strange. What? I'm slowing it down. I'm just looking at it as if I'd never seen it before. And so, Mirban, you're saying, I have an idea in my head for something.
Yes.
And what happens is I have the ability to make that thing come out of my head, down through my arm. And this is the perfect thing to translate it onto a piece of something so that other people and I can see it. Okay? Do you see how the word pencil just isn't enough anymore? It's way more amazing. This is now an idea translator.
Yes, I think so.
It's an amazing thing. It translates ideas, right? This is long before AI. This is long before any of the kinds of technology that translate language. Here it was all along, ready to translate ideas into the world. Amazing.
Amazing.
And who would have thought, just like the cloud, who would have thought that the thing that can translate ideas outside of our brain, take it out of our brain and put it on the world, is also the thing you can put your hair up with? Who would have thought? That's an amazing thing. One thing doing both those things. Okay.
Great. Thank you.
It is. It's amazing. Thank you. Okay. Next. Dynamic forces. We've seen objects. We've looked at it just for what it is. That's what we tried to do, is just describe what it is. Then we went to the context, and that added a whole nother set of really interesting things that when we thought about what was happening in those places. And now what we want to know is, what are the dynamic forces? What are those invisible influences that shape the behaviors and outcomes of the ways this works? Okay. And like other forces, from if you guys think about your science classes, forces affect things. They push on them, they pull them, they turn them. So what we're wondering about, what are the invisible forces that are acting on the context and the objects? In this case, this object. What are some dynamic forces? And I'll give you an example. If I'm away from home and I miss my mom, that might lead me to want to communicate with her and write her a letter. Okay? So I might start trying to figure out how to do that. And in the context I'm in, I might look for an object that helps me do that. Okay? Object. Context is, let's say, I'm on a boat or I'm at school. But the dynamic force is my desire to write a letter. And that will all of a sudden, sorry, that will activate that dynamic force of desire to write a letter, activates the system. It sort of turns it on. Okay? And all of a sudden, this thing that was sitting in a drawer in a desk It comes out and it's activated in this context so that I can write the letter home. You see that? Okay. Or in Nadima's case, there was something that got her to put her hair up, and it was invisible. That something is really invisible. It could be that her hair was like in her eyes. Let's say she's gone running and she's sweating and the hair's in her eyes. She just wants it back. The desire to have that out of her face could have been a dynamic force. All right. So that's what we're looking at, is we're looking for the dynamic or invisible forces that act on the context and the objects. Can anyone think of another one? Just raise your hand, anyone who can think of another dynamic, an invisible force that could result in change or the activation of this particular object.
Anis, please go ahead.
Hello, sir. I was thinking, I was thinking I would use that. I usually use that for taking notes. So the dynamic force in that case would be like, I don't want to lose that information or anything that the teacher is providing to me. Like in this case, if I'm taking notes for this session, so that might be something that I want to keep these things in my mind and on a piece of paper or something, so that I can recall that whenever I want to and revise that.
Fantastic. So one of the things you just taught us is that the fact that I'm guessing you're a brilliant young guy and you're brilliant and you still can't remember everything.
Yeah.
Isn't that, I mean, you'd think that if we're a brilliant person, that it would be easy to remember everything, but actually as humans, we can't. We can only remember a little bit and only for a little while. And the desire, the deep desire to hold more than our brain can hold at any moment has us reach out into the world for tools to help us. Okay? This is one of the ones we go to. So your desire to possess knowledge is a fantastic example of a dynamic force. Okay? That's a really good example. How about somebody else? Anybody else can see another dynamic force?
Let's go to Anojita.
So thank you so much for picking me. Maybe in exams halls, as Anis told, like I would like to, when I have the desire, or like when I have the fear, if I fail in the exams, then I would like to pick the pencil and write the answers for those exam questions, because of the fear that I have. Oh my God, if I don't write the answers, then I will get failed, or maybe I couldn't complete my ambition, or I couldn't complete my degree, something. So the fear might.
So yeah, I think fear is always, and in this world, it happens that a lot of the things we do come out of fear. A lot of design decisions that we make are made with an understanding of people's fears. I'm so glad you mentioned that. Thank you. So your fear of failing an exam or not getting a good grade on an exam is what's driving you to do a lot of things. Not only use the pencil, but you probably have a way of using the pencil, don't you? What kind of pencils do you like to take to exams? Andajita? What kind? Yeah, what kinds of pencils?
Something bit long,
Long.
because I can hold it properly. Like I'm just imagining the exam halls. So something bit long, and as well as very smooth, it doesn't, so then I can hold it and write it very quickly, and also in a way I wanted to use it.
Okay,
So,
and
yeah.
is it are you choosing a pencil that is got a very soft tip
No,
or a very
it should
sharp
be
tip?
something strong.
Strong, but is it sharp or rounded, yours, for an exam?
Sharp.
And why is
Should be
that?
sharp. Because then only I can write it clearly. I can write the letters clearly, and yeah.
Good. Okay, so you not only want to get it right, but you know that getting it right has to do with being clear. And this thing is amazing because it actually can be made to be good for writing clear ideas. But for somebody else who loves to draw, sometimes they don't want it sharp. They want it very round, right? It can do both. Okay, so it answers other desires. Okay, these are each really good examples of dynamic forces, okay? What I want you to do is be able to do this with any complex problem you get. And I want you to see that almost every problem, every challenge, every question you're asked is in fact complex. Okay? So if someone asks you, your mother asks you, what do you want for dinner? You can just answer. But if you answer in a way that acknowledges the complexity of her question, it gets much more interesting. Life as a person interested in change and leadership and design gets much more interesting if you answer her question in a complex way. Okay? So you could answer her exactly what you want to eat. Or you could ask it back in a way that opens the question up. You could say, what vegetables are in season? Or what is the food, what is the dish that we could cook that would bring the most happiness to the most people at the dinner table? And she'd say, no, wait, I just asked you what you want. What do you want for dinner? And you say, no, but there's a much more complex potential here if I think more in a more complex way about the question you're asking. And you guys are about to enter the world in which the world is going to look to you for answers. And my invitation to you, my request even, is that you don't give them back simple answers. Give them back complex answers and other questions that acknowledge the richness of those things, just as you found richness in this pencil. Okay? This pencil is actually so amazing. Did anyone notice tooth marks on it? There are, right? Very often we have tooth marks on the pencil. Why is that? Somebody raise their hand and share with us why there are tooth marks on the pencil.
Sohail, go ahead.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk. Am I audible to all?
Yeah.
Actually, sir, when there is a teeth on the pencil, then it looks like that we have thought something, and when we brainstorm some ideas, we usually put the pencil in our mouth and then think about the situation.
What? Wait, I thought this was for hair and I thought this was for writing. You're now telling me that it makes ideas come out of your head, or it makes ideas better?
It is traditional, you can say that whenever when our teacher put us in our group, we usually put pencils in our mouth in order to brainstorm the ideas, and then the idea come up from our mind.
That's amazing. Okay, so now you're using it to make the ideas come out from your mind.
Sir, I have another question as well. If you allow me, then I will.
Yeah, well, I'm going to open it up for questions in a minute, okay? But before I do, I want to suggest that tooth marks on a pencil are for coming up with ideas, right? We all chew on them. Also for relieving stress. Does anyone do that? Yeah. So you relieve stress. And have you ever seen in any advertisement for pencils that it's a good replacement for a psychiatrist or a therapist or a conversation with a friend? You can chew on this and it'll relieve your stress, just like those other things do. But for those of you who are interested in business, how much do they charge for a pencil?
Michelle, we can go to you.
Hello?
Yeah.
Thank you, Professor, for the informative session. I would like to say that 3 years ago, I've attended a conference and they discussed a same topic, or you can say that is a related topic to this, by the name of hidden curriculum.
Okay, cool. I love it.
Hidden
That's
curriculum. Simply is that your superior's opinion or things that can influence the way you choose your career. Say that what if your teacher tell you that this specialty is bad for you and this is a time consuming, so that according to his said you can change your mind about this specialty. Is it a related topic to that, or it's different? By the name of Hidden Curriculum, Frederick Haverty, a book by this name.
Okay, so I'm not familiar with that, but I wanted to ask you while you're there, how much does a pencil cost?
Less than $1, I think.
Yeah, less than $1. And yet it does all the things that you guys have just described.
Yes, it's a multitasker tool, I think.
Yeah, I think they're undercharging for it.
What?
I think they're too inexpensive. I think that they should be much more expensive.
Why did that? Why is that?
Because we've already learned all the things it does. It holds your hair back. It relieves stress. It makes good ideas come out through your arm into a piece of paper. It does all those things. If you invented something that did all those things, how much would you charge for it?
Not too much. I already have one pencil and I get it with it. But after this session, I believe I can handle it back and I will take care of my pencils from now on.
Good, good. Take care of your pencils. So my point is this, that when you are able to see the familiar as strange, all of a sudden the things around us become quite amazing, and we will see in them potentials and possibilities that other people don't see. Okay? That's the point of today. As you take on these, the challenges of the world, your ability to see potentials that others don't will distinguish you as leaders and decision makers, and even designers. Okay? So here are some of the outcomes. You can take a screenshot of this if you want. I won't go through them all because I think we're at time. But the potentials that are all around you and everything as simple as pencils will absolutely blow your mind if you allow them to. Okay? And it's one of the things that we do with complex challenges, like the threat of nuclear war, like medical crises, like the future of education, or I'm working right now on a project on the future of the postal systems globally. Okay. All right. Tiara, I'm fine to stay on for some questions if people want, but I want to be respectful of the time also.
All right. So first, thanks so much, Daniel. That was an incredible talk. I'm sure I don't know if you've seen the chat, but folks are really, really excited. How about we do 1 or 2 questions?
Sure.
And just before we move on to questions, I know for many of you, it's very, very late at night, or some of you may have class starting. So please feel free to log off if you're not able to stay on for the Q&A. Just want to say thank you for coming today. And if you have questions about the Crossroads Emerging Leaders Program, you can email us at celpglobal@gmail.com or message us on social media. But now we'll transition into Q&A. I know Aldo had a question from before, so I want to maybe quickly return to him, and then Zarek, we can go to you, if that sounds good.
Yes, I think I'm only had in this session. I'm very, very much happy. It's been very interesting. I had a lot of notes in here. In fact, my desk is full of notes. Basically, like a therapist to me, a therapist session to me, because it is able to reflect back, and also I'm able to see what inspired in my life through this design thinking idea that Professor shared in with us. If I look at all these things, the dynamics, the context, it tells me that what maybe I'm doing right now is not out of a mistake. I'm just like a pencil that many times I have ideas that have been shaped, but the issues that I had written somewhere on the key 3 things that I picked from this discussion. One is on the issue of the mindsets, and then secondly, on the issues, the context in which we so these 2 things have able to reflect in my life on 3 things in relation to innovation. I'm an innovator. I love innovation, though much at times I've been taking on arts also. But 10 years back, if I look at the context, dynamic forces that pushed me through innovation, it's made me actually to come up with an innovation hub. Through, I think I would use my design thinking, my innovative ideas to come up with something for my community. That was one. But secondly, there are issues, the uncertainties, just like we had the 2 on the principle that talks about bias and certainty, the principle 3. It's basically draws back my attention to how we as youths, sometimes our mindset has been taken off from us. Basically, I say this because many times design thinking is where we solve our problems as a youth, as community. I say this because in 2015 and 2016, even 2014, I participated in very many awards, innovative awards. And out of all these awards, I realized that was the moment where my mindset away from me. Because in 2015, I had a chance to participate in one of the awards organized by the key
I want to make sure we have a chance to allow other students to speak. So
okay, just let me summarize. So these are just in summary, the awards, sometimes we go innovations with our design thinking ideologies into awards. Then after awarding us, because we give a prototype of the ideas that we push in here, and later on these things are taken out from us, that tells me my mindset has been taken up by someone. And secondly, the education system does not allow us to go into design thinking. It makes us more of competitiveness. I cannot collaborate with a colleague, maybe Medina knows how the pencil is set in the hair. So how can I collaborate with her on the other angle of how I use the pencil, also come up with something? This education system has put me compete with her in the essence of a collaborator. So all these things here affect our mindset, rob our mindset, and it makes us more of having this double vision. So how can we save this discussion from there? Thank you very much.
Daniel, I don't think we can hear you.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So what I do want to respond to that. I think you had a lot of observations, Aldo. I didn't really hear a question until the very end, but the idea that design, it sounds like you consider yourself an innovator and a kind of problem solver. The challenge in this work, I think, also listening to the way you asked your question or the way you made your observations, is to recognize that the solutions lie in the context and in the dynamic forces. There's a great interest among designers, particularly young designers, to be clever and inventive. And what they miss is that the best source of understanding, the best source of answers is in the context already. So you actually don't need to invent as much as you think you do. You need to be able to pay attention to what's happening in front of you. Okay? So an example of that is somebody who goes like to a crime scene. Do you guys ever watch crime shows on TV? Right? So on a crime show on TV, what will happen is the old detective will come on the scene, right? And hold on, let me just, yeah. So the detective will come on scene and he'll walk up to the body. And what usually happens there? There's some junior police officer who's already disturbed the body, right? We've seen this in every crime show we've ever seen. And the old detective knows that the clues to solving the murder or the crime, they're not right there on the body. They're somewhere else in the room. So the first thing that person says is, stop, don't touch anything. Don't disturb anything. Everybody out. Okay? This is the mindset, although you want to be in as a designer and a problem solver. Don't look at the thing only. Look all around it. Be a good listener. Be receptive to the stimulus that's coming in, and you will get much further in developing sustainable, long-lasting, appropriate, relevant design solutions. Okay? All right, one last question.
Mohammed, we can go to you.
Yes, thank you. Just as students of public policy, we always learn that, as you said, we have when we analyze a solution or we come up with a solution, we have to think of the solution from different angles. So let's say if I'm choosing effectiveness and efficiency as the two criteria for analyzing my solution, might not be enough. So I might have to think about the social acceptability. I have to think about the extent to which the public will accept and support the proposal. So if that's the case, when we confront the trade-offs or we think of the solution, analyze the solution from different angles, is there a way that I can create a measurable unit for intangible assets or intangible alternatives for our...
Great question. This is, Mohammed, you may not like my answer, okay?
Okay, so...
Capturing the intangibles, okay, the qualitative information is difficult. It's different from quantitative information because it's hard to describe. And sometimes the best ways to describe it are creative. So if you've got a public policy issue and everyone's looking for data, if you have to put everything into the form of data, you will miss huge dimensions, big dimensions of the value of that topic you're looking for, okay? Like if you're looking, I'm just gonna make something up here. If you're looking to describe social cohesion in a micro enclave in a city, okay? So let's say we have a number of people who've moved to this
city from a neighboring region, and they've clustered together. Trying to describe that could be very difficult with data only, but music could help, right? Photography would. We could take pictures of it and what it looks like when that community gathers. When do they do it? How do they do it? What does it sound and feel like? Okay, so my recommendation and my invitation to you guys is start to capture the world around you in a multiplicity of ways that are equal to the richness of the world. Make art. Be performative. Document sounds. Document, if you can, emotions. How do we get at meaning? We know that meaning drives a lot of change, and yet it's very hard to describe meanings, except in these kinds of ways. So, Mohammed, I love the question. It's a great way to end the session, is to invite you guys to go out and take a look at the things that you're already working on, the projects you're already working on, but in new and dimensionally more interesting and dynamic ways. Make those things much more complex, okay? Because then when you come time to make your recommendations will hold the complexity of your understanding. They will not be reductive. Okay? And I promise you, this will not be easy. This will ask more of you. You're going to have to find language, because a pencil, now you're not going to want to use the word pencil anymore. You're going to have to come up with new language. You'll have to come up with new forms of describing things. But the danger is that our confidence and our certainty, our desire to be right, forces us into a reductive state of mind that allows us to push our opinions at other people. And as designers, that's a very dangerous frame of mind to be in. So you want to hold as open a perspective as possible for as long as possible. Okay? All right. That's probably a good place to stop, but I could keep going on. But through Tiara, if you all have questions or want to share anything, I'd be happy to reply to you or to direct you to resources. Okay? So Tiara, if it's okay with you, I'll just thank everyone. I really appreciate this opportunity. I've enjoyed this very much. It's helped me to clarify some of my own thinking. I'd never thought of the hair with the pencil before, so that was brilliant. So thank you all a lot.
Yes, huge round of applause to all of you for your thoughtful contributions. So my mind definitely expanded with your dialogue with all the students, and thank you all for being so present, active in the chat, and speaking up when you're called on. Also, huge thank you to Professor Hewett for joining us and for facilitating so much interaction. Really, really incredible session.